People love to say that faster is better, especially when it comes to ski lifts. However, in examining the context of applications of both detachable and fixed grip versions, there is a clear dichotomy in their ideal use. There is also a common misconception when it comes to the differences between the two. Join us today as we debunk a misconception and explore everything around whether faster ski lifts are truly better. Now, detachable lifts might get you up the mountain faster, but they can also get a lot colder during the ride. Then again, sitting on a slow fixed grip for twice as long isn't exactly a cozy alternative either. To get all the footage you'll see today, we wore our gloves and mittens from Save Your Heat, which we'll talk more about near the end. If you want to keep your fingers warm and nimble enough to still run a GoPro in -20 wind chill, you'll want to stick around for that. Alright, let's start off with the counterintuitive. Fixed grip chairlifts can have just as high of a capacity as a detachable. Now, I've had many people argue vehemently in the comments that I'm wrong and that I don't know what I'm talking about. The funniest in recent memory was when I had one person resort to just typing, "I'm right and you're wrong" in all caps, which really helped change my mind to agree to a mathematical impossibility. Whoever that was, I'd like to thank you for partially inspiring this video. Regardless, said math doesn't lie. The theoretical capacity of a chairlift depends only on how often a chair passes the loading point, not how fast the lift is moving. Think of it like cars at a toll booth. If one car passes every 6 seconds, it doesn't matter whether the cars are crawling at 5 miles per hour or zooming by at 50. What matters is that one passes every 6 seconds. The same goes for chairlifts. If a 4-person chair crosses the loading line every 6 seconds for 1 hour, the lift will move 2,400 people in that hour. You'll notice that nowhere in that equation does speed appear. Here's the subtlety. Line speed does affect capacity only when combined with chair spacing. Fixed grip lifts move much more slowly overall, but their chairs are packed closer together. Detachable lifts move faster outside of the terminals, but their chairs are spaced farther apart. Inside the terminals, when the chairs detach from the cable, they actually move slower than a typical fixed grip, which maintains a constant speed throughout the system. To visualize it, think about a traffic jam. When the front cars slow down, the cars behind catch up, putting them closer together. The same happens inside detachable chairlift terminals. In other words, you could have a detachable chair in the terminal at 100 feet per minute, a fixed grip lift in the terminal at 500 feet per minute, and a detachable chair out on the line at 1000 feet per minute, but if you pick a single point along the line, all of them can have the same number of chairs pass by in a given time because the spacing of the chairs is adjusted to match the speed of the cable. Of course, in the real world, even when a similar fixed grip and detachable have the same theoretical capacity, their practical capacity is different. I think this is where a lot of people get mixed up. Just remember that in a perfect world, a fixed grip and detachable are perfectly capable of having the same capacity, though in the real world this is very rarely the case. What does happen is this. People fall trying to load or unload fixed grips much more often than they do with detachables, causing them to slow or stop. There are several other nuances to it, but that's the biggest one, and any chairlift that is moving has a higher capacity than one that's stopped. Let's see if someone can find a way to argue about that in the comments. Let's now switch up a little bit and discuss the applications in which each category shines. A quick disclaimer here is that although we try to balance consideration of both resort economics and guest efficiency, everything we state from here out is just an opinion. The first application for fixed grip lifts is the obvious one, short runs. If you've got a lift that spans only 3,000 feet, it often just doesn't make sense to build a detachable, particularly in consideration of their similar achievable capacities. The key thing to note about fixed grip and detachable lifts is that not only do detachables cost more than double what a fixed grip does, they cost exponentially more in maintenance and have service lives that are, on average, a decade or two shorter than their fixed grip counterparts. So for a detachable to be better for the resort, it must elevate the guest experience so much that it can overcome the economic burden to the ski area. Think about a ski resort in the Midwest, whose fixed grip ride takes only 6 minutes. To warrant the construction of a detachable for that hill, there must be some other factor, which we'll get into in a bit. The next application for fixed grips are in areas that are subject to harsh weather, particularly rime ice. When a ski lift ice is over, lift maintenance has to come out and clear the ice off the rope, grips, shivs, and pretty much any other part that's exposed. When it comes to fixed grips, it's a much simpler process to clear ice off their grips, since detachables have significantly more complex, and more fragile parts on their grips, requiring much more care from the icebreaker. If recurrent late openings are a theme on a particular alignment, a fixed grip can help to speed the de-icing process along, getting the lift opened earlier and for longer. The third situation for a fixed grip is pretty simple: mountains with tight budgets. In some cases, it may make sense from the guest perspective to build a detachable, but it simply isn't feasible for the ski resort. Even if the ski resort has the capital to construct it, it may simply be too big of a gamble. After all, detachables have significantly more moving parts than fixed grips, so not only is a breakdown more expensive to fix, but it's also more likely to a degree. For a mountain to spend millions of dollars on new infrastructure, they need a guarantee that it'll work. And for mountains with limited budgets, it often doesn't make sense to invest so much more in something potentially less reliable. The final good application for fixed grip lifts are a specific category of connector lifts, those that get you from A to B once or twice a day that don't really serve any terrain of their own. A great example of this is Keystone's Wayback lift. Wayback is a fixed grip and takes a painfully slow 10+ minutes to ride up. However, most guests take this lift at most twice a day, since its only purpose is to leave the outback. In another facet, it is even better served as a fixed grip. Since Wayback is the only way back from the outback, it needs to be as reliable as you can possibly get. As we just touched on, fixed grips are better suited to that role as well. So for such a scenario in which you need a connector lift that people will only use a handful of times, doesn't serve its own pod, and won't have any redundancy, a fixed grip is the go-to. If you look closely, you can find one of these at almost any major ski resort. Now we get to the fun stuff, where detachables shine. The first example for this is also the most obvious one: the long runs. At the end of the day, it just doesn't make sense to have a fixed grip with a 20-minute ride when you can build a detachable that has half that. If the ride is atrocious enough, people will start to avoid that area, creating bottlenecks and flow issues in other parts of the mountain. And if it's serious enough, word gets out, and people will start avoiding the mountain altogether. This is where you most commonly see detachable lifts. It may be expensive to the resorts, but the improvement in the guest experience overpowers the economic pitfall. Another good application for detachables is when a mountain requires efficient loading and unloading. This can mean a couple of different things. For one, it may mean a high-capacity lift at a choke point or out of the base area. In that case, you want to keep things moving in order to keep chewing through the line consistently. For another, it may mean a lift that services lower-level demographics who often struggle loading the chairlift. We'll get more into this in a second. Either way, since detachables slow significantly for loading and unloading, they are obviously the go-to when a mountain needs something that almost everyone can reliably use. The last major use for detachable lifts just falls under the umbrella of quote-unquote experience. This is where we talk about a mountain like Deer Valley perhaps not needing a detachable in certain areas, but building one anyway because it's for the brand. Their Homestake Express replaced a fixed grip that had plenty of capacity and only a 5-minute ride time. Sure, it stopped sometimes for people falling, but the main reason why they built a detachable is to make the mountain feel bougie. First of all, it worked. But second of all, that major use for detachables is just to maintain an identity. Of course, that can apply to fixed grips too, in which a resort chooses a slower lift to maintain the character of a certain area. But when a tourist thinks of Vail, they expect the best lifts. In order not to disappoint, Vail maintains a fleet of 20 detachables and only 3 fixed grips, one of which is slated to be replaced by a detachable in the coming years. Vail may not be the best example here since most of its lifts are exceptionally long, but you get the idea. It's to meet customer expectations from a branding standpoint. Now, one of the themes that we love to come back to on this channel is the evolution of the bunny hill. For this video, we saved this to the very end because it's the most unique category here. It fits both types of lifts. The older ideology was simply that because learning areas are so short, it only makes sense to have a fixed grip. But the newer school of thought is turning more to the idea of attracting beginners to return. By providing an easy-on, easy-off detachable, a mountain like Steamboat is instantly cementing itself as a better option than other mountains who only offer intimidating fixed grips. However, there is no single correct answer when it comes to beginner terrain. Some of the world's shortest detachables are being built in the modern era to conform to that newer ideology, but at the same time, we see new beginner fixed grips every year as well. This is the embodiment of what we said earlier in the disclaimer. It's nearly impossible to strike a perfect balance between guest experience and mountain economics. Bigger resorts are often the ones who have the resources to invest heavily in the detachables and reap the benefits over time as those skiers return. Smaller resorts can just stick to the old fixed grips, no harm, no foul. Regardless, just a bit of food for thought. Now, as we mentioned earlier, we've been wearing Save Your Heat gear for a while now. This footage wasn't all collected in a day, so if you don't believe my words, take it from the fact that they've been our go-to gloves and mittens for well over a year. Earlier this season, I got a chance to show some of my favorite features.
Now, what a lot of people don't seem to realize is that these Save Your Heat gloves are not solely good on the super cold days. So these have been my daily drivers for well over a year, and I've worn them in everything from -10 up to 50.
They say on the website that the batteries on medium are supposed to last for 6 hours. I've gotten it to last a whole ski day. And for those of you familiar with the channel, you probably know by now that I have never been this excited to show off a product to you guys.
Now, in the past, I went through a pair of gloves from a very reputable brand in about 30 ski days for how rough I treated them. These Save Your Heat gloves, no problem. There's a whole load of other features to these gloves, but I don't want to waste time on that. I just want to say that genuinely, I use these gloves. Arjun uses these gloves. Everybody behind the camera here at SRG Skiing uses these gloves. And let's be honest, if they weren't worth every penny, we wouldn't be back here again for the second season in a row.
If you want to take a closer look, there's a link in the description below. And if you're looking to buy, don't forget to use code SRGSKI for 15% off.
With that, I'd like to extend one more huge thank you to Save Your Heat for making our everyday glove decisions easy and for sponsoring this video. We hope that you found it informative and would welcome your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, please consider subscribing to help support this stream. Thank you all so much for watching. All my love, I'm out.